Hi, my name's Simon Woodland. I'm the Manager of Sustainable Environment at Bass Coast Shire Council, and in this video I'd like to share with you a few key points that I hope will help you understand the role local government plays in managing our coastlines. It can be a really tricky space with lots of moving parts, and obviously the coastline itself can move a lot. So we hope that this will help you understand the role that Council can play and how you can be involved. I want to start by acknowledging that this can be a really challenging issue. It can be really hard to see the places that we know and love, and sometimes we're very, very invested in, to see them change so dramatically over time, maybe even over the course of a weekend or a night, can be really confronting. So we're here for that. One of the reasons I love working in this space is that I feel like it's a challenge that we can address if we work on it together. So please stick around for a few minutes and let's see if we can help each other understand some more about how it all works and how it comes together. What I'll be covering in the next few minutes is some of the, I call it Coastal Management 101, which is that role that we play and that you'll see us doing on a day-to-day basis. Some of the history of our region and some of the hotspots or headlines you might be familiar with, and some of the responses that we're doing at the moment on a day-to-day basis, week by week, and some of the next steps we're planning for those hotspots. So the coast in Bass Coast spans about 180 kilometres, which is almost 10% of the Victorian coastline. Now, if you were shipwrecked off that coast and stepped ashore somewhere in our region, the first patch of dry land you'd set foot on is what we call the coastal foreshore. It's that area between the high water mark and the first sort of property boundary, if that's private property or a public road or something. So that coastal foreshore area is Crown land. It's public land. It belongs to everyone and no one. It's land we all get to enjoy. So ultimately, the responsibility for that land rests with the state government, but they assign day-to-day responsibility for managing that coastal foreshore area to various parties. In a lot of places, as this map depicts, where the red is and often where a township meets the coast, in places like Inverloch, Cape Patterson, Kilcunda, Cows, that foreshore manager is Bass Coast Shire Council. In other places, such as a lot of Phillip Island, it might be Phillip Island Nature Parks or Parks Victoria or DEECA, Department of Environment, Energy and Climate Action, the state government department. So there's a range of coastal managers, coastal foreshore managers, including local community committees of management. But we also acknowledge that at the end of the day, we're managing this foreshore on behalf of one community. So we work together as far as possible to make sure that your experience of going to the coast, going to the beach, is as seamless and consistent as possible, irrespective of who's managing it. Council often manages foreshores where townships meet, and Inverloch is one of those foreshores where most of the surf beach and the township stretch of beach in Inverloch into Anderson's Inlet is managed by Bass Coast Shire Council. So we have been working with the state government and with the other agency partners who have a stake in that patch of coastline in Inverloch to ensure that our management of that coastline serves the needs of the Inverloch community, the visitors, the residents, and nature, the creatures, the plants and animals that live on that foreshore. So these maps give you a bit of a zoom in and give you a sense of how our mapping system reflects that coastal foreshore zone. It's a narrow strip. It varies in width, of course, but it basically spells out that line in the sand between where council management takes precedence or where we might need to refer to a different agency like Parks Victoria. And the first map here is that surf beach area in Inverloch with the Surf Lifesaving Club featured there, and it just sort of references, by the time you're heading up the surf beach towards Bunurong Road or Cape Patterson Road, management responsibility on the beach hands over to Parks Victoria. So we liaise really carefully with them to make sure that the foreshore is managed well. But we've also got other agencies. There's a creek there, so that's responsibility for that. We have to consult with the Catchment Management Authority. We've got the Amazon shipwreck there, so we consult with Heritage Victoria over how that's managed. And of course, we consult with the local community groups like the Surf Lifesaving Club, who clearly have a stake in this patch of beach and how they can get on and off it freely to be able to support you to have a good time in the surf. In contrast, or down here in Silverleaves, we've got a slightly different setup where the coastal foreshore, it doesn't meet Surf Life Saving Club or a road in the first instance. It meets private property boundaries. So that introduces a different dynamic, obviously, because as coastal erosion progresses, the first thing to be threatened are people's private homes or backyards. So when council is the manager of a foreshore reserve, that also means we've got responsibility for managing whatever assets or uses take place on that foreshore reserve, and they can vary from picnic shelters, park benches, rotundas, barbecues, through to rail trails, as we have through Kilcunda, surf lifesaving clubs, buildings, and coastal protection structures such as the sandbag wall in Inverloch, or public open space like the main beach here in Cowes, which is probably, almost definitely one of our most popular spots over the summer for places like fireworks and markets. The way we manage those assets and those spaces is ultimately governed by a bunch of state government policies, which I'm not here to bore you with today, but it's important to note that the state government has put a lot of effort in over recent years since the release of the Marine and Coastal Act in 2018. They've also provided a marine and coastal strategy, a policy, and a plan that sets out how the coasts of Victoria will be managed in order to adapt to the changing climate through to 2100. So those documents and policies and laws help to govern what council will do and what we can't do, and the processes we follow when we're responding to things like coastal erosion. And this little diagram here is going to feature in a few of my slides, but it's an important sort of overview to guide how we think and how we process the action that we take. And it's a cyclical process, and it's about engagement and communication, but it's also about understanding the specifics about each site. Because while our coastlines are beautiful and dynamic and picturesque, every single patch of coast has its own sort of character, and it behaves according to its own rules. This is nature. This is nature at its best. The way the waves, the way the wind, the way the sand and the vegetation interact in each of these spaces can be quite different. So it's about understanding what's at risk as those dynamics change. Is it the picturesque space? Is it an asset like a building or a home or a road? And then how do we manage that risk and adapt as things change? Then we need to monitor that and obviously go around, I guess, in a cycle over years and decades to make sure that the action we're taking is effective at protecting what we love and not causing undue risk or harm in some other way to things that we value. So I'll zero in now on Inverloch and talk you through some of the steps we've taken in recent years, but I encourage you to think of it as almost a case study. In this, the same process is much of what we'd follow in any location around the Shire. So since the coastal erosion really started to bite in Inverloch between 2012 and 2020, as that really came to a head, the state government, the State Minister for Environment, declared the first regional and strategic partnership, which brings together 9 of those land managers that I talked about earlier, including Bass Coast Shire Council and traditional owners, into one sort of partnership. We've been meeting regularly for 4 years now to go through this process to better understand what's going on in Inverloch, what can we do to help and assist to protect and conserve community values in that space, whilst not sort of trying to wage some futile fight against the natural forces. We need to understand what's really going on in this coastal area, so that we can take informed action that will work and be a good use of our resources. So all 9 agencies, or all 9 parties have taken an active role in this process to date. And that has culminated in a plan, which I'll talk to more in a moment. First of all, though, the coastal compartment, we call it, the span of interest for this Cape to Cape Resilience project spans from Cape Patterson all the way to Cape Lip Trap. And that's deliberate. That's because this patch of coast behaves as one single unit. And that's a really interesting thing to get your head around, I think, in the first instance, because whilst we know and love specific spots, maybe let's focus on the surf beach in Inverloch, what the science tells us when we study this area is that the sand that comes and goes from that beach comes and goes, and it travels through this part of the coast. So it's when it's not on the beach anymore, we call it erosion. The sand's gone somewhere. It's gone into the inlet, or it's gone out into the Venus Bay, and over time it can come back again, or it can turn up as a sandbar or an addition to Point Smythe, for example. So the science that we've been conducting over recent years is all about actually understanding in great detail how that system behaves, and what are some of the drivers, because that'll help us inform whatever action we take to make sure that we're not adding to the problem, that we're actually solving it. So, of course, anyone who's familiar with Inverloch won't be a stranger to these sorts of images. Probably the most dramatic thing we've seen in recent years is since 2012, we've lost nearly 70 metres. The ocean has advanced 70 metres inland, and the Surf Life Saving Club is the best demonstration of that. Previously when you might have had to walk through a lengthy set of dunes to get to the beach. Now it's almost lapping at the doorsteps. So this is the sort of observation that kicked off the RASP. And in 2020, we took sort of, emergency action to build this geotextile sandbag wall in front of the Surf Life Saving Club to protect that community asset while we conducted this process, so as to better understand the bigger picture. That's a bit of a calculated risk, because we know in a sandy environment like this that's exposed to the full force of the Southern Ocean, what a beach wants to do is move back and forth, erode and accrete over time. When we build a hard asset in that environment, obviously that's a risk to that asset. When we build another hard asset to protect that life-saving club in the form of a sandbag wall, we're not solving the problem so much. We're protecting the surf club for now, but we're really just deferring the problem. We're sending the problem to the end of the wall where it can erode the dune either end, and we're buying ourselves time. So we acknowledge that. We know that this is not a permanent solution, but it buys us time so we can have these other conversations. So the partnership I referred to earlier, the Coast to Coast Resilience Project, has resulted in the development of a resilience plan. And now this is based on a lot of science, a lot of community engagement and conversation. I hope you've been part of that. If you haven't had a chance to be part of it yet, there's still time. There's still web pages dedicated to this. We'll throw some links in for you to look up on it. But basically that resilience plan, it looks to help everyone in the community, including the land managers and decision makers, understand what's really going on here and help us plan for the future so that we can invest public funds and effort accordingly. And it really is focused on understanding how the science helps us predict what will happen next, and how we take action to protect what the community values, and how we collaborate and work together to make sure that we get the outcome we want. So, quick summary of that process to date. From 2020, when the RASP kicked off, the Cape to Cape Resilience Program kicked off, we've had studies of community values, we've studied the cultural heritage values of the area, we've studied from a science perspective what are the hazards and what risks are we exposed to. We've understood the economic assessment. In Bass Coast, we love to say that the environment is our economy. We know that beaches like Inverloch are a key driver for the local economy, and keeping that beach as natural as possible and as accessible as possible is going to be key to ensuring Inverloch continues to have a thriving visitor economy. That said, there are risks and there's assets at risk, vulnerable now, so we need to understand that. And then we've been building this adaptation framework, which helps us plan our actions over the next few years and decades. That, as I said, results in this Cape to Cape Resilience Plan, which is with the Minister now for endorsement. And obviously throughout this entire process, we've had community engagement, we've had pop-up sessions, we've had surveys, we've had engage pages online. I'm confident that we've heard from a lot of the Inverloch community and the visitors who love Inverloch, so we can really get a sense of where those key values are. So in summary, from top to bottom here, we've developed a resilience plan off the back of all that work. It recently was out for public comment, and that feedback is now with DEECA and the state government to adopt into the final resilience plan and have adopted by the Minister for the Environment. So what does all this mean for next steps in Inverloch? First of all, we're working with the state government and our fellow agency partners to build back a lot of the beach in the surf beach area of Inverloch. This will see a lot of sand brought from out off the coast and in the inlet potentially back onto the beach to bring the level back up, bringing some protection to the assets and infrastructure immediately threatened and the dune vegetation there. So that's a major project. There'll be lots more coming out about that over the coming months, but it's a one we're working on for next year. It's the first step in our adaptation plan for this section of the coast, and we're working towards something that will set the area up for safety for 5 to 10 years at least. Meanwhile, you can expect to see council on the beach from time to time, especially in the aftermath of some of the storm events like we've had in September and October. You'll see us down there immediately as soon as the conditions have eased. We'll be down there to assess tracks, make sure they're safe, or close them temporarily if necessary until we can make them safe. Please respect that. We're closing tracks from time to time for everyone's safety, and we'll open them as soon as we possibly can. You'll see us down there sometimes with heavy machinery moving sand around. Why do we move sand around? Isn't it a waste of money? It's actually a really good question. When we engage with the community around Inverloch about what they love about this beach and what they love about the town, overwhelmingly what we hear is, yes, our life-saving club buildings and all those other built assets are really, really important. But the thing people value above all else at Inverloch Beach is that it's still a really natural-looking, beautiful beach. So we're looking to preserve that natural amenity for as long as possible. And the best way we can do that for now is to help the sand move back to where we want it and where we need it. We know it'll move again, but we can go and get it from wherever it's moved to in that coastal region and bring it back to where we need it. And at least for now, for the next 5, 10, maybe 15 years, that'll allow this beach to maintain its really natural character. Why don't we just build a bigger wall? Is another question I know a lot of people have on their mind, and it's a good question. We've already built a little wall in front of the Surf Lifesaving Club and it's working, but the simple fact is the science tells us, now that we've got really specific science for Inverloch, it tells us that this is a beach, it's a sandy beach backed by a dune, and it's exposed to the full force of the Southern Ocean, which means when nature is throwing all her power at us, there's nothing we can do to stop that necessarily. If we try and stop it with something as solid as a rock wall or a sandbag wall at scale, what happens is all that wave energy has to go somewhere. It hits that wall and it goes somewhere. And what it'll do is it'll go to the sand at the end of the wall, and it'll go to the sand under that wall and at the beach. And in areas like this, where those sorts of hard walls have been built, what we see over time is that the beach is gone and all we have is a wall facing the ocean. So what we're going to continue to do for now is top up the sand as we need it, while we continue to engage with the community about those longer term plans. Meanwhile, there's a few things we can all do when we're visiting the beach or any coastline in Bass Coast. Keep in mind it's a natural environment. It might have changed since you were last there. Keep your wits about you. Just as you'd swim safely and swim between the flags, please use the beach safely. If an access track is closed or looks like it's a bit steep or beyond your ability, there'll be another access track not too far away. Please keep safe. If we have had to close something, or if we've got heavy machinery on the beach from time to time, please, keep an eye out. We'll try and be as clear as we can about our plans and have signage and things in place, but please keep your distance and help us manage the beach safely so that it can be back into its normal state as soon as possible. And get involved and get informed. There's a whole bunch of information online you can check out now, including other videos like this specific to our region. Have a look, read up, and let us know what you think. Thanks for watching.